Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Aim High podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest, Tammy Henault. Ms. Henault is a world-renowned chief marketing officer who has worked at some of the most influential companies in media and sports. She has been recognized as one of Forbes' world's most influential CMOs and has built an incredible career leading global marketing organizations. She began her career at Time Inc., later working at CBS All Access, which eventually became Paramount Plus, where she helped drive digital growth and marketing strategy. Most recently, she has served as the Chief Marketing Officer of the NBA, where she led global marketing efforts for the league and its affiliate organizations. At the NBA, she oversaw and led major initiatives, including the growth of NBA League Pass and award-winning campaigns such as The Heist, which helped launch the NBA's in-season tournament. Beyond her executive roles, Ms. Henault also serves on Spotify's Marketing Advisory Board, is an angel investor in the International Dance League, and sits on the board of Forbes Apex. She's an incredibly accomplished marketing leader, and it is truly an honor to have her joining us today. So, Ms. Henault, welcome to the Aim High podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, well, to start off the podcast, we will first talk about your childhood and upbringing. Because this podcast is centered around being an Asian American leader in business, it is important to first understand each guest's childhood and upbringing as an Asian American. Ideas instilled within you from your parents, your environment may have helped you become successful and where you are today. So for the first question, could you explain your childhood situation growing up?
I was born in Korea, but I moved to the US when I was just a few months old. I was actually adopted by my incredible mom and dad. They were biologically related to me. My mom was my biological aunt, and my dad was her husband. They were living in Maryland at the time because my dad was a US Army soldier. So we moved around a lot. My upbringing was growing up in military bases and communities kind of all across the US. I lived in Maryland and Texas and Virginia and DC, overseas a few times and back again. So I guess, that experience growing up certainly made me really adaptable and, really having to figure out how to incorporate into new communities and get to know people time and time again, wherever I went. Especially since, I know you asked about siblings, I grew up an only child. So it was also, especially difficult at times, kind of picking up and starting new and fresh in new places all on my own. But grew up really close to a lot of family both overseas in Korea as well as across the US.
And how was it growing up as an Asian American, but also being connected to Korea overseas and growing up in many different places and being in tune with kind of your Asian American identity?
Yeah. I'd say the bicultural Asian American was really like how I grew up, right? My mom was Korean. She immigrated from Korea. My dad was American. And I grew up with, values across the whole spectrum. And it definitely shaped my growth and my identity as a person, right? Because I think often I get a lot of questions about the Asian customs and traditions, and especially around the expectations and the pressures. And I certainly had that, but I also had, the American lens to it as well. And certainly even a different picture of it because it was more around the American military community and that lifestyle and those expectations. So it was a blend of two for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did your parents' experiences kind of influence your perspective on work and especially success for the future?
Yeah. I think when everybody takes a look back in their history and their upbringing, right, your parents' influence and how they modeled themselves is so crucial to your formative years and what makes you you.
Yeah.
I think, as mentioned, my dad was in the Army. He was in the Army for 30 years.
Wow.
He served in the Department of Defense for 15 years after that. So growing up, I just consistently saw him as someone that was deeply committed to duty and service. I saw him go to work every day with purpose. And, he rose to the rank of Command Sergeant Major, which is a rank where, at that point, you're really leading, right, like a battalion of soldiers. And I just grew up watching him command rooms with speeches and carrying messages of inspiration and seeing him earn the respect and loyalty of his troops. And like, I think that constantly being in the background of my upbringing really taught me what it looks like to see somebody lead from the front, but also knowing, how much behind the scenes, hearing about the conversations of how he was helping to coach or develop or care for different people that were going through a lot of different challenges in their lives, helped me also see how important it is to care about people on a human individual level. So that, I think that's just like was very formative in terms of how I saw leadership and, think about modeling leadership today. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, and I think I feel so incredibly lucky and thankful to have had that constant steadiness in my life. In that way, like she taught me, I think, lessons of resilience and dedication, and how sometimes like those quiet and unrecognized actions and behaviors can be like the most important things in life. And that's probably shaped a whole other aspect of me for sure.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned the pressures from like parents and stuff, but like did they have any expectations on you, or were they very like you can go do your own thing, try many different things, or did they have like a path that were like, oh, you should be a doctor or you should be like do something else like lawyer, or did they have any expectations that they placed upon you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly parents, I think, I don't know if I would characterize them as much as expectations
Uh-huh.
as like hopes and dreams, right? You have hopes and dreams for your kids, and
Yeah.
my parents certainly had those for me. Their hope and dream when I was younger was they wanted me to be a dentist. They thought it was just like a really great, career field to go into.
Yeah.
I didn't get as much as the doctor, the lawyer, which a lot of Asian, Asian American kids get from their parents. But I certainly got a little push to go into dentistry, which I didn't do. But
Mhm.
truly, at the end of the day, and I'm so grateful. Like they just constantly reiterated that I could truly do whatever I wanted. So they
Yeah.
wanted me to really figure that out for myself, and that hard work was at the foundation of getting to where you needed to go, and
Of
just
course.
having conviction at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's definitely among the top themes of like the hard work is always like the center of the like childhood, even if some parents want them to be a doctor or some have more like freedom of choice, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that, that encouragement, right, that anything is possible was
Mhm.
so important. And it was just more like if you want something, you go figure it out. No one's going
Yeah,
to hand it to you.
yeah,
Get
go
creative,
get it.
find a path and be okay with failing and learning from those mistakes and trying something a different way if it doesn't work. And I think that is all in the theme of adaptability and, you know, creating something that's meaningful.
Yeah, and as we move on to the second part of the podcast, talking about education and earlier moments in your career, what was your undergrad experience like? And did you know you wanted to go into marketing right away, or did this kind of interest develop over time?
So, kind of going back to that original question you had, when I enrolled in college, I did think I was going to be pre-med. um, but I very quickly kind of fell into loving the field of marketing and communications in general. I started taking a lot of marketing classes and learning about consumer behavior and market research and, studying ad campaigns and understanding the psychology of what makes somebody care about something, whether that's a brand or a product or a belief. And I quickly fell into loving marketing, and so I wouldn't say I went into undergrad knowing that's exactly what I want to do, but it's something that I built an interest in over time.
Yeah, and as you built that interest, can you walk us through kind of your journey to some of the earlier companies that you worked at, like Time Inc. and also the New York Times?
Yeah, so I started my career at Time Inc., which I think has now gone through a few iterations of their company name and branding, and it's called People today. I got that job through an on-campus recruiting event, right? So
Mm.
I went to University of Pennsylvania. We had a lot of companies come and recruit in college, and Time Inc. was one of the companies that came to campus, and I really, got to learn about the organization, and I had an interest in media and entertainment. And People magazine was at a heyday at that point, for sure, in the early 2000s. And I felt incredibly lucky to get the opportunity. I specifically actually was invited to join a program that was called the Logan Scholar Program, which was a program specifically designed to bring in more diverse talent into the media and publishing industry. And yeah, I got a really great opportunity to do that. And that pretty much, set me on my course in media and entertainment.
Yeah, and then how did you then move on to New York Times after that?
So I spent a number of years working across a number of the titles, from People and Time and InStyle, when I was at Time Inc. And I learned a lot about subscriptions, a lot about digital audience development. I was in magazines at the point in time where there were all these new ways to consume media, including, the invention of the iPad and, magazine, when we were trying to figure out how do we create what the reading experience is going to be on this new digital device. Like, how do you translate a print magazine into this digital thing? And had a really great time being at the forefront of a lot of those conversations and figuring out how to grow an audience on digital platforms. And so that actually led me to the New York Times. I got a call from them when they were about to launch their digital subscription and paywall business. And they were looking to try to figure out, how do you capture and convert this audience that's shifting and migrating right to the web and all these digital platforms and apps, and create a new monetization stream, a new revenue stream for the organization. It sounded like a really interesting business challenge and a new frontier, if you will. And I had always deeply respected the Times and think journalism plays an incredibly important role in society and the world. And so I wanted to join them and see them be successful. So that's what I did.
Yeah, and when you were at the New York Times, what was some of your greatest accomplishments or some of the projects that you were most proud of?
During my time at the Times, really what we were working on and what I was working on was driving new customer acquisition and driving engagement and retention for the digital subscriptions for that business. And so what I'm most proud of is that it worked, that we were able to figure it out, that we were able to create the positioning and the messaging and the right packaging and promotion for the service to get enough people to decide that news and quality journalism and supporting journalism at this scale was important and worth paying for. I was there at the height of Twitter and bite-sized news, and there was this sense that news is a commodity and people can get it anywhere and really wouldn't pay for it. And I'm just glad that we were able to really diligently create that messaging, optimize the different touch points with the consumer and the reader to show the value of actually paying for journalism. So I'm just glad I was able to be there and create a model that worked, and then be able to, when I was there a few years in, we started getting calls from organizations all around the world, right, trying to figure out how to build this revenue stream and create this model for their own businesses. And I think that was an incredibly rewarding experience to see that something that we developed and were able to figure out is going to help organizations and news organizations around the world.
Yeah, and after your time at the New York Times, how did the opportunity to join CBS come about, and what made you feel that it was like the next step in your career to move from the Times to CBS?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a theme in my transitions, but I got a call from CBS, and CBS was similarly going through an interesting media consumption change. They're part of the linear world of television, and really saw audiences moving to streaming in a big way. And they wanted to be able to bring CBS content direct to consumers in a streaming service, and wanted to be the first organization, the first television network to do it as a standalone service, which at the time there was a lot of negative articles written about it. Like, it really was the underdog. Like, who would ever subscribe to a service from one network? Fast forward to today. I think there's probably a service for almost every network. But at the time, it was a novel idea, and I was interested in moving into a new medium, having been in kind of publishing and newspapers and magazines for a really long time, and got the opportunity to really build something from scratch. The opportunity was to come and build a new marketing organization for the company, for a new business that didn't exist yet, and I felt really excited about that prospect.
Yeah. And then when CBS All Access was kind of rebranded and launched as Paramount Plus, this was a huge moment in the streaming platform world. But what was kind of like your involvement with this decision to kind of rebrand CBS All Access into Paramount Plus?
Yeah, it was all consuming. It took over my life for many years.
Yeah.
So the rebrand came about after the merger of CBS and Viacom. Once the merger was completed, on the CBS side, we had this service called CBS All Access. We had at that point built it into a strong streaming service, millions of subscribers. And now we were looking to expand the platform to bring in the content from the rest of the Paramount portfolio. And so, or at that time, it was called Viacom, the rest of the Viacom portfolio. Yeah. And the business challenge was really, how do we create this new destination that's not just a single service for a network, but a destination that is going to be a house of brands for all of the content in the entire company. And that was an interesting challenge, right? From figuring out like, what is a name that can stand on its own to really house the content from all these networks and brands, and something that can resonate and already have, brand recognition globally. Yeah. We were launching this globally. And so a lot of that work that went into it was a ton of research, a ton of naming exercises, segmentation, global naming exercises to really understand where within sort of the prestige and the portfolio of Viacom could we really anchor this new service that would be a destination for all of our content.
And if you can share, what was that naming process like, or some of like the backstories into how it was named Paramount Plus?
There were a number of names that we considered that were names within the portfolio. So think Paramount, was one of the names within the portfolio. Think Showtime, think CBS, all of the single brands we had. Then we also had another set of names that were entirely new names. And we tested both, and there was a front runner of a entirely new made up name, in addition to names that already had built up brand equity and identity. And there was a lot of debate and a lot of data, really, truly, and research that went into deciding which direction to go.
And then for this like transition, like what was kind of like the core vision, as you were one of the people in charge of marketing, that you were trying to communicate through like marketing during this transition?
I mean, in the communication for the rebrand was shifting from a single network content to a house of brands, and the fact that now we're a destination for all of this content. So the positioning and the messaging when we launched was Paramount Plus, a mountain of entertainment across, entertainment, sports, and news, because we really were housing content from every category and genre. And that was what we were trying to communicate, and that's what we leaned in heavily. That's what we used the iconography and imagery around. That's certainly what we built, our launch campaign around as well.
Yeah, and could you maybe walk us through how the Super Bowl ad promoted the rebrand of Paramount Plus, and how a Super Bowl ad even comes to life as someone that does marketing?
Yeah, great question. And how does it come to life? I mean, it comes to life very strategically, you get the notion of, all right, so who are you trying to talk to? What are the messages we're trying to get across? How do you position, we call it the hooks. Like, what are the hooks that you have to make sure you communicate and deliver to that audience to make sure that they get what you're trying to tell them? Do it in an entertaining way, especially for the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is like trying to entertain the audience as much as, sell them a product.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, how do you get someone to feel an emotion, based on what you're trying to talk to them? Humor, of course, is a really great way to capture people's attention. And so that was really where we started. It's, what's the tone? What's the goal of the messaging? What are we trying to communicate? Who are we talking to? And then how do we build the storytelling and the creative execution in such a way that'll deliver on all of those goals?
And I'm just like super curious on how the execution was done and what part of the campaign process were you part of that?
Yeah. I mean, from the ideation, early like development of the concepts, and then really it's a partnership between me. There was our head of creative at Paramount Plus, as well as our agency partners that were all constantly talking through the strategy, talking through the execution, the creative decisions at every point, whether it's the music or the talent or the animated characters that we were bringing to life all together in one spot. We came up with a campaign that ultimately we called the Paramount Plus Expedition, because the whole idea was that, all of the characters within the Paramount Plus portfolio were coming together on this mountain and trying to get to the top, where ultimately when you get to the top, there's basically a big party with all of the talent together. And it was trying to communicate that now on this one service, Paramount Plus, which was the mountain, you have all this content that you can watch at one time that's spanning such a long horizon and deep catalog. And yeah, it was a really, really fun campaign to work on. It was incredibly challenging to shoot. So I know a little bit of your question was around like, how does it get made? And for this campaign in particular, we were shooting it in the middle of the pandemic. And so you can imagine we had a lot of different talent and cast that were coming together, and every single person had to be shot individually and then brought together in VFX. So the lift on the creative was exponentially difficult because of how it had to be shot.
Yeah. And looking across this entire earlier chapter of your career up until Paramount Plus, what do you think best prepared you for the huge leadership role you would step into next at the NBA?
For me, it's a sum of the parts, right? So if I think back at every chapter of my career, it helped kind of set another building block towards the opportunity that was, of course, to be the CMO of the NBA. I mean, the first was earlier in my career, I really got to learn a number of different marketing functions and had the opportunity to change into different roles to really round out my experience and skill set. And I think that was so critical, was to try to become, an expert in certain aspects of marketing and build and learn a craft, which I'm so thankful my time at Time Inc. and in the publishing space allowed me to do. Then when I think about, going to the New York Times, that, helped me learn mechanics of launching, growing, and building a new business model, and also working with an iconic brand, right? I mean, Time and People, they were also iconic. And the New York Times had a bit more of a global scale and a global reach to it. And that experience just helped, me have the confidence that when the CBS role came, I said, okay, I have expertise in a number of these marketing functions. At the Times, I learned how to build and scale a new business. I think I can go and try to figure out how to do this at a completely new place and starting to build it from scratch. So everything kind of built on the next thing.
And moving into the third part of the podcast, talking about your latest role at the NBA as the Chief Marketing Officer, how did this role come about, the opportunity to join the NBA as their CMO? Was it like another phone call, or how did it go?
I told you there was a theme. It was another phone call. Um, and, I really wasn't looking to make necessarily a proactive move at the time. I had just spent, over 8 years kind of launching and growing and building this service, Paramount Plus, that was just, starting to expand and grow even more significantly globally. Mm-hmm. But of course, when someone calls you about an opportunity, to work at one of the most iconic brands in the world, you
How can you say no?
Exactly. And so, really just had no expectations when I started that process, and really just got to start meeting the leadership team and learning about how my background experience could really help them during this moment that they were going into, and started to get really excited about sort of the business challenges that were ahead of them, and how my background and my experience could really help add value to the organization. And so certainly when I was offered the job, it was something I could not turn
You
down.
could not give up. Yeah, and what were some of those kind of like things that they had planned for you, or this like kind of next phase that they wanted to go into, that your expertise would add a lot of value for them?
Yeah. The organization was going through a lot of really important kind of shifts and growth opportunities. I mean, as an organization is already incredibly massive brand, huge lifestyle interest, great brand recognition globally, huge reach on digital and social already, right? So the organization already had really compelling assets, and it was already coming from a position of strength. I think the areas where they were shifting into at that time was about to go into a new media renewal window. So was looking to really figure out like who are going to be the next partners in distributing the content over the next decade. Was really looking at growing and building a number of the digital products for the business, whether that's the app or the League Pass business, and really focusing on scaling those businesses and operations in-house, which my experience in the subscription space and the streaming space was relevant. And also just like grow engagement and viewership, which content marketing, my time in entertainment and media, was very relevant in terms of wanting to drive ultimately tune in and viewership and eyeballs to the content. And that continues to be a priority for the organization, because at the end of the day, the core product is the live game and getting as many people to watch it and engage with it as possible. So those were the goals, and I was really excited to be able to come and assist in achieving them.
Yeah, and you led marketing campaigns for like the Heist and the Heist 2 for helping launch the league's first in-season tournament, which did really well. And as a basketball fan, I loved it. So I was just wondering, like, what is kind of like those similar kind of to the Paramount, but in what ways did you approach this commercial, or like the Heist and the Heist 2, in like a new way?
Yeah. So, I mean, what a exciting experience it was to be able to launch like something new for the league, where thinking through the positioning, the messaging, the packaging, the promotion of the entire thing. To have that opportunity, I'm so grateful that I was there during a window that we were investing and launching in a new franchise, essentially, for the organization. And like, firstly, the concept of this tournament was something the organization had thought about for a really long time, and of course, leadership of Adam Silver, and really looking at how do we innovate the game and drive more interest and bring more audience forward earlier in the season, and help create another moment that is another championship moment for the league overall. And like trying to think through, okay, like how do we create a compelling narrative to get the fans excited and bought in, because fans like you are who we need to convince, first and foremost. And then sort of the logic went, if we need to get the fans excited, we want to get the players excited first and foremost, right? So how do we
Yeah.
ensure that like we're making this feel like something that is meaningful and new and different and worth like leaving it all on the court for?
Hmm.
Um, and those were kind of the big like North Stars. It was like, as we're thinking about the strategies and the opportunities and the messaging, it just kind of kept coming back to, is this going to make the fans care and excited? And is going to make our players care and be
Hmm.
excited about it? And so, um, how else to generate that excitement than creating a whole concept around actually winning the trophy and getting the trophy, which is how the idea of the heist came about. Is like, we want there to be this like excitement, and we want fans, players, everyone across the league to really be excited about winning this new trophy.
Hmm.
So how do we build a narrative to showcase that in a unique and different and compelling way, right? And then also, things like making the courts different colors. It's how do we differentiate the experience, the viewership experience, how people are seeing it either live when they're at a live game or on the screen, to immediately identify that this is something new and different.
Hmm.
Because the game being played is going to sort of be the same, but we need it to all tie together in one way. My brilliant colleagues from all across the league, all had a hand in thinking about the different and unique ways to make the tournament stand out. And I think the outcome kind of speaks for itself. Like, people
Of
are
course.
excited about it. People care. I think the league's been overall really happy with where it's landed.
Yeah. And beyond those ads, what were some other key marketing decisions that you helped make for like the in-season tournament besides like just like the heist and like the heist too?
I mean, it was every step of the way. I mean, like I said, outside of the campaign, outside of making the courts and the experience feel different, I mean, it was the way we were communicating and educating fans about how the tournament worked, what nights, you could watch it, right? So that's
Yeah.
everything from email to our websites to our apps, how we're communicating it with our distribution partners, so that when people are turning on their TV, they understand, what they're watching and when's a in-season tournament slash NBA Cup night or not.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, huge different promotions. Certainly, when we went to Vegas for the championship rounds, it was more, how do we make that experience when we're on the ground feel unique and different? So, of course, had a different set of courts, had different, tunnel walks. We created a
Mhm.
very unique experience for our players to differentiate that they're actually entering sort of a new phase and a new part of the tournament. So to physically bring that, and of course
Mhm.
had fan activations and on the ground promotions. I mean, we really, if you think about kind of all the different touch points with fans, we definitely invested in and marketed it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and looking back at your time at the NBA, what do you think this role taught you about marketing and also about yourself that maybe no other role could have done?
I mean, the biggest difference and learning from the league was probably understanding the scale and impact of the decisions we made, and how far reaching those were, right? So it was, you had to be really confident in the decisions being made, because they were going to be, for our campaigns, we're going to be running in 215 countries and dozens of languages. Like,
Yeah.
it was an incredibly large platform and reach, both for the brand as well as, to our fans. And it was very top of mind,
Mhm.
the scale of the decisions that were being made and the reach of those decisions.
Yeah, and as we move on to the fourth part of the podcast, talking about challenges and overcoming obstacles, being an Asian American in a leadership role can come with its own sets of challenges. If you have had any, what were some obstacles you may have faced in your industry, particularly due to your background?
I mean, I think there's, consistently challenges that come from, being a woman or being a minority and often feeling like there's extra effort or extra self-advocacy that has to be done in order to get, similar treatment or recognition or reward as potentially
Hmm.
other colleagues. I guess certainly at different points in my career at different companies, I've certainly felt that way. And um, but I think a lot of different types of people and women in particular all go through moments where you're feeling like you have to just consistently advocate and um, fight for what you believe in. And in my role, when I was in my role at the NBA, I felt also a sense of responsibility of um, showing up for a group of people that, I felt like I had some responsibility to represent and, showcase and do a good job. My God, I think the AAPI community in particular really came out with so much love and support and encouragement for me in the role. And I was like, I really can't mess this up. I've gotta, I've gotta show up and represent. And so those are all things certainly that I've had to navigate in my career.
Yeah, and what role has your cultural background played in shaping your leadership style and also perspective as a business leader, and how have you found ways to use it as a strength in your career?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, my cultural background like spans bicultural across Korean and American values and ways I was as brought up. And for me, it's more about how do you lead, how do you adapt, how do you help encourage others.
Hmm.
Those are the things that I think that from my upbringing I've been able to bring into my leadership style.
Yeah,
Less not like tied to culture, but not necessarily culture, of course, right? Like
yeah.
you could say the we talked about it a little bit earlier, but that notion of like keeping your head down and doing a really great job um, is a value. And so much so that definitely when I would tell my parents, especially my mom, at times that I was going to leave a company that I was more or less doing really well at to go to a different place, like she would have a heart attack every single time, right? Because it was like why would you leave a place, like they like you, you're doing so well, like why would you do that? And I think just not being afraid of change and encouraging folks to try new things. I don't
Yeah.
know, those are the types of things that I think I carry with me that are more driven from culture.
Yeah, and moving on to the last part of the podcast, talking about advice and inspiration. If you had to sum up your experience into three core marketing principles or tips that every marketer should understand, what would they be?
Three tips would be: one is just stay curious, ask questions, learn new things, figure out the why, try to understand what actually moves people, particularly being a marketer. I think understanding passions and values and how to align your product with purpose is so important in having effective campaigns that actually move people. So that's one. Not being afraid to fail. I think we talked about that a little bit, but I think
Yeah.
that's so important in also experimenting and trying new things. But learning from mistakes, I think, is as important than getting things right. And let's be honest, nobody gets things right all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially leaders. So um, it's just really important to creating that belief that that constant learning,
Hmm.
continuous learning is really important. Um, and the third is just, I think, like leading as a whole person, as somebody who I think became a leader really early in my career. I feel like I've constantly going back to consistent improvement, constantly been trying to improve, how I show up for other people. And I think understanding that in any given moment, people have a dozen other things going on in their lives, especially today when people have a lot of concerns and are worrying about, who knows what's happening in someone's life or other parts of the world, that just empathy and caring for people at an individual level and knowing what moves people besides just what motivates them at work is incredibly important.
Yeah, and for the last question for the podcast, how would you define success now, and how has that definition changed since the beginning of your career?
So at the beginning of my career, I certainly was looking up at, a number of the marketing leaders in the field, and was dreaming that success would be to become a CMO one day. And today success is about, basically doing work that fulfills you and I think, gives you purpose and feels meaningful to you every single day. And knowing that, what you're doing is making an impact in people's lives, whether it's entertaining them or bringing community together or, fundraising or whatever it might be. I think there's a number of different things. And I think everyone's contribution is so important in one way or another, that success is doing something that brings you joy and also has a positive impact in the world.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I love talking about the Paramount Plus, the Super Bowl, the heist with all the NBA in-season tournament stuff and all your experience and especially these pieces of advice at the end. So thank you so much again for your time today.
Thanks for having me. It's nice chatting.